Thursday, 2:47 a.m. The glow from my laptop screen painted harsh shadows across our kitchen table as I stared at the router logs I'd just cracked. Cybersecurity tip number 1. Never marry someone who thinks private browsing actually means private. My name's Connor Ames, and after 12 years auditing corporate networks for vulnerabilities, I'd finally found the biggest security breach of my career, right in my own home. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The house felt different at this hour. Cold, silent, except for the hum of our overpriced refrigerator and the occasional creak of settling wood. Jenna had gone to bed hours ago, claiming exhaustion from her boutique's inventory crisis. Funny how those crises always seem to coincide with her mysterious coffee dates. I'd been suspicious for weeks. The late-night giggles from the bathroom, the way she angled her phone away whenever I walked by, the sudden interest in yoga classes that somehow never improved her flexibility. But it was the credit card statement that really caught my attention. 3 charges at Rosewood Cafe on days she claimed to be working late. My fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced precision, navigating through our shared cloud storage. Jenna always mocked my paranoid habit of backing up everything, but tonight that paranoia was paying dividends. Hidden in a folder labeled Boutique Marketing were photos that had nothing to do with retail strategy. The first image made my stomach drop. Jenna, wearing the red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, sitting across from a man I recognized as Markham Dole, one of her boutique's suppliers. His hand was clearly visible on her thigh under the table. The timestamp showed last Tuesday, the same day she'd texted me about working through dinner. I scrolled through more photos. Jenna and Markham at different restaurants, in hotel bars, even one taken in what looked suspiciously like a motel room. But it was the last photo that made me laugh, a bitter, hollow sound that echoed through our empty kitchen. A wine glass reflection clearly showed Markham's face as he leaned in to kiss my wife. Amateur hour, I muttered, screenshotting everything. You'd think a supplier would understand basic operational security. My phone buzzed with a text from Jenna. Can't sleep. Thinking about you? The timestamp showed she'd sent it from the bedroom upstairs, probably while scrolling through her own collection of memories with Markham. I typed back, Funny, I'm thinking about you too, specifically about asking Markham's wife if she enjoyed those new pictures you've been taking. The response was immediate. My phone exploded with notifications as Jenna sent 12 consecutive texts, each more frantic and typo-ridden than the last. What do you mean? Connor, what pictures? Are you going through my phone? You have no right. It's not what you think. Please don't do anything stupid. We need to talk. Connor, answer me. I can explain everything. Please. Connor, I'm coming downstairs. I heard her feet hit the floor above me, then the sound of frantic stumbling as she rushed down the stairs. By the time she burst into the kitchen, wild-haired and wearing the oversized t-shirt she'd claimed was just comfortable, I was calmly stacking her belongings in a cardboard box. Connor, what are you doing? Her voice cracked with panic. Spring cleaning, I replied, dropping her boutique credit card, now cut into neat squares, on top of her jewelry box. Little late in the year, but better late than never. You can't just... This is my house, too. Was. I slid the divorce papers across the table, already signed and notarized. Filed electronically an hour ago. Amazing what you can accomplish with a decent internet connection and a law degree you actually use. Jenna's face went white as she saw the photos printed out and paper-clipped to the legal documents. Where did you get these? Cloud storage, dear. You really should read those terms of service agreements more carefully. Automatic backup means automatic, even for files you think you've deleted. She sank into a chair, hands shaking as she flipped through the evidence of her affair. Connor, please, it's not what it looks like. Really? Because it looks like my wife of 12 years has been playing house with a married supplier while lying to my face about inventory meetings. I added her car keys to the box. But hey, maybe I'm misreading the situation. Maybe that's just how boutique managers negotiate bulk discounts these days. Don't be cruel. Cruel? I laughed, pulling up my email. Cruel would be sending these photos to your boss, your mother, and Markham's wife without giving you a heads up, which coincidentally I did about 10 minutes ago. The color drained completely from Jenna's face. You didn't. I did, along with timestamps, location data, and a detailed breakdown of every lie you've told me over the past 3 months. Amazing what metadata can tell you about a person's real schedule. As if on cue, Jenna's phone started ringing. The caller ID showed Dani Dole, Markham's wife. Then it rang again. Mom. Then again. Simone, regional manager. Looks like the chickens are coming home to roost, I said, standing up and brushing invisible dust off my hands. You might want to start answering those calls. Something tells me tomorrow's going to be a very interesting day at the boutique. Jenna collapsed forward, her head in her hands, as her phone continued its relentless chorus of incoming calls. Connor, please, we can work through this. We? I picked up the box of her belongings and set it by the door. There is no we anymore, Jenna. There's you, there's Markham, and there's whatever mess you've made of both your lives. I'm just the guy with the security clearance and the really good memory for passwords. I walked toward the stairs, pausing at the bottom to look back at my wife, my ex-wife, hunched over the kitchen table like a broken marionette. Oh, and Jenna, next time you decide to cheat on someone, maybe don't do it with a guy who supplies your workplace. Creates what we call in the cybersecurity world a single point of failure. As I climbed the stairs to pack my own bags, I could hear her finally answering one of the calls. Dani Dole's voice was loud enough to carry through the phone speaker, and her opening words made me smile for the first time in weeks. You home-wrecking little bitch, I hope you enjoyed playing house with my husband, because I'm about to make your life a living hell. I hadn't even started my real revenge yet. This was just the opening act. The Rosewood shopping district looked different in the harsh morning light, like a movie set after the cameras stopped rolling. I sat in my car across from Bella Boutique, watching through the floor-to-ceiling windows as Jenna's carefully constructed world began to crumble. It was 9:15 a.m., and the store should have been buzzing with pre-opening activity. Instead, I could see Jenna standing in the middle of the showroom, gesticulating wildly at a stern-looking woman in a power suit. Simone Cartwright, the regional manager whose phone call had been blowing up Jenna's phone since 3 a.m. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Dani Dole. We need to talk. Coffee in 1 hour. Rosewood Cafe. Perfect. The same cafe where my wife had been conducting her romantic negotiations. I typed back, see you there. I'll bring the photos. The boutique district was already alive with gossip. I could see it in the way the other shop owners clustered together, glancing toward Bella Boutique and whispering behind their hands. Small towns are like corporate networks. Information spreads through the most unexpected channels, and once a breach occurs, containment is nearly impossible. At exactly 10 a.m., I walked into Rosewood Cafe and immediately spotted Dani Dole. She looked nothing like the society wife I'd expected. Mid-40s, sharp-featured, with the kind of predatory intelligence that suggested she'd built her own fortune rather than married into one. She was sitting at the same table where Jenna and Markham had posed for their incriminating photos. Mr. Ames. She stood to shake my hand, her grip firm enough to crack knuckles. Thank you for the wake-up call, literally. Mrs. Dole, I figured you deserved to know what your husband was doing with his business trips. She gestured for me to sit, then slid a tablet across the table. Before we continue, you should see this. The screen showed a private Facebook group called Rosewood Ladies Network, apparently the digital gossip mill for the shopping district's female business owners. The latest post, uploaded just 20 minutes ago, was a detailed breakdown of Jenna's affair, complete with photos, timelines, and a scathing commentary on women who betray their sisters for married men. You did this? I asked. I did this. Dani's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Turns out your wife wasn't Markham's first extracurricular activity, just his most recent. I've been collecting evidence for months, waiting for the right moment to burn his world down. Your little email gave me the perfect excuse. She swiped to the next screen, showing the group's member list. Nearly every female business owner in the district was part of it, including several of Jenna's supposed friends and most of her regular customers. The post has 37 comments so far, Dani continued, all expressing shock and disappointment, several mentioning they'll be taking their business elsewhere. Your wife's reputation in this district is officially deceased. Through the cafe window, I could see more activity at the boutique. A security guard was now standing by the entrance, and Jenna was nowhere to be visible. What about Markham? I asked. Fired as of 8 a.m. this morning. Turns out the board of directors doesn't appreciate suppliers who compromise their professional relationships with personal entanglements, especially when those entanglements become public knowledge. She leaned back, satisfaction radiating from every pore. 23 years of marriage, and he throws it away for a boutique manager with delusions of grandeur. My phone buzzed with another unknown number. Connor, this is Clara from the boutique. We need to talk about Jenna. She's in trouble. I showed the message to Dani, who snorted. Clara Hendricks, Jenna's assistant manager and supposed best friend. Also the person who's been covering for her affair for the past 3 months. I wouldn't trust her as far as I could throw her. Noted, I typed back to Clara. Trouble is what happens when you lie to your husband for 3 months. She made her choices. The response was immediate. You don't understand. There's more to this than you know. Meet me at Murphy's Roadhouse tonight at 8. Come alone. Dani read the message over my shoulder. Murphy's? That dive bar on the outskirts? Interesting choice. Very public, lots of witnesses, hard to have a private conversation. You think it's a setup? I think Clara Hendricks is about as trustworthy as my soon-to-be ex-husband, but I also think she knows things that might interest both of us. She stood up, straightening her jacket. I have a divorce attorney to meet with, but Connor? Whatever you're planning for revenge, count me in. Markham destroyed my marriage, and your wife helped him do it. They both deserve whatever's coming to them. After Dani left, I sat in the cafe for another hour, watching the boutique district's gossip network operate with the efficiency of a well-designed algorithm. Information flowed from shop to shop, customer to customer, creating cascading failures throughout Jenna's social and professional network. By noon, the security guard was gone from the boutique, and a temporarily closed sign hung in the window. I drove by slowly and caught a glimpse of Jenna through the back office window, slumped over her desk like a broken doll. My phone rang. Jenna's number. Connor, please. I know you hate me right now, but I need help. They've suspended me pending investigation. Simone says I violated the supplier relationship policy and brought negative publicity to the brand. My friends won't return my calls. My mother is flying in from Phoenix to discuss my life choices. I can't even access our bank accounts. That's because I froze them this morning. Amazing what you can accomplish with power of attorney and documented evidence of infidelity. You can't just cut me off from everything. Actually, I can. It's called protecting marital assets during divorce proceedings. A very standard procedure when one spouse has demonstrated a pattern of deceptive behavior. She was crying now, the kind of ugly sobbing that comes when someone realizes their actions have consequences. Connor, I'm sorry, and I know I messed up, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, work through our problems. Our problems? I laughed, pulling into the parking lot of Markham's now former office building. Jenna, we don't have problems. You have problems. I have solutions. What does that mean? It means you're about to learn the difference between making mistakes and making enemies. I'll see you around the district, dear. Try not to trip over your reputation on the way out. I hung up and walked into the building lobby, where a security guard was helping Markham carry boxes to his car. The man who'd been confident enough to seduce another man's wife looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair disheveled, and his hands shook as he loaded his personal belongings into the back of his Tesla. Perfect. Time for Phase 2. Murphy's Roadhouse squatted on the edge of town like a carbuncle, all neon beer signs and cigarette-stained wood paneling. The kind of place where conversations were measured in whiskey shots and grudges were settled with pool cues. At 7:45 p.m., the parking lot was already half full with pickup trucks and motorcycles, their owners seeking refuge from suburban respectability. I found Clara Hendricks in a corner booth, nervously shredding a napkin while nursing what looked like her third martini. She'd always been the prettier of Jenna's friends, blonde, petite, with a kind of calculated innocence that made men underestimate her intelligence. Tonight, though, she looked like someone who'd been carrying a heavy secret for too long. Connor. She stood to hug me, but I slid into the opposite seat instead. Thank you for coming. Clara, you said there was more to the story. I'm listening. She glanced around the bar, making sure we weren't being overheard. It's about Jenna and Markham. The affair, I mean. It's not what you think. Really? Because I think my wife was sleeping with a married supplier while lying to my face. The photos seem pretty clear on that point. The photos only show part of the story. Clara leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. Connor, Jenna didn't start this affair. She was recruited into it. I raised an eyebrow. Recruited? By me. The words hung in the air like smoke from a gun barrel. Clara took another sip of her martini, her hands trembling slightly as she set the glass down. I need you to understand something about the boutique business, Connor. It's not just about selling clothes, it's about relationships, connections, social hierarchies. Jenna was good at the retail side, but she was terrible at the politics. She kept getting passed over for promotions, losing out on the best supplier deals, missing opportunities because she didn't know how to play the game. So, you taught her to sleep with suppliers? I taught her to use every asset she had to advance her career. Markham controlled the premium inventory lines, the designer pieces that made the real money. He'd been making moves on female managers for years, but he was careful about it. Never anything that could be proven, never anything that crossed legal lines. Clara's explanation was interrupted by a commotion near the bar. A group of men in work clothes were arguing loudly about something, their voices carrying over the jukebox. But what caught my attention wasn't the argument. It was the familiar figure trying to slip unnoticed through the crowd. Markham Dole, looking like a man who'd lost a fight with his own life. "Well, well," I said, loud enough for him to hear. "Look what the cat dragged in." Markham froze, his eyes darting between me and Clara like a trapped animal looking for an escape route. The bar conversation died as heads turned to watch the drama unfold. "Connor." Markham's voice was hoarse, defeated. "I didn't know you'd be here." "Really? Because Clara here was just telling me all about your recruitment strategies. Fascinating stuff. Very professional." Clara grabbed my arm. "Connor, please, let me finish explaining." "Explain what?" I stood up, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet bar. "How you pimped out my wife to advance her career. How you turned her into a corporate prostitute for better supplier deals." "It wasn't like that." Clara's facade cracked, revealing something desperate underneath. "Jenna made her own choices. I just showed her the opportunities." Markham started backing toward the door, but the crowd had shifted, forming a loose circle around our booth. In a place like Murphy's, entertainment was entertainment, and a public confrontation was better than whatever was on TV. "Opportunities," I repeated, pulling out my phone and opening the photo gallery. "Is that what we're calling adultery now? Because I have about 30 pictures that suggest your opportunities involved hotel rooms and wine bars." I held up the phone, showing the clearest photo of Jenna and Markham kissing. Several people in the crowd whistled or made crude comments. Markham's face turned the color of raw meat. "You want to know what's really funny?" I continued, warming to the audience. "My wife actually thought she was being clever, thought she was playing some sophisticated game of corporate chess, but the whole time, she was just another mark in Clara's little side business." "Side business?" Markham looked confused. Clara's face went white. "Connor, don't... Oh, you haven't told him?" I smiled, feeling the satisfaction of a perfectly timed reveal. "Clara here has been running this same scam for years. Find an ambitious but naive manager, introduce her to a supplier with wandering eyes, then blackmail both sides for favors. Jenna wasn't Markham's first affair, and she wasn't Clara's first victim." The crowd was fully engaged now. Someone called out, "Tell us more." Another voice shouted, "What kind of favors?" Clara stood up abruptly, knocking over her martini. "You don't know what you're talking about, Connor. You're just angry because your wife found someone who appreciated her." "Appreciated her?" I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "Lady, he was using her for closeness, and you were using her for leverage. The only person who didn't know what was happening was Jenna herself." Markham finally found his voice. "That's not true. I cared about Jenna. What we had was real." "Real?" I pulled up another photo, this one showing Markham with a different woman at a different restaurant. "What about this one? Or this one?" Another photo, another woman. "How many real relationships were you having, Markham?" The bar erupted in laughter and jeers. Markham looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Clara was gathering her purse, preparing to flee, but I wasn't done with her yet. "The best part," I announced to the crowd, "is that Clara here thought she was so clever she started blackmailing her own victims. Isn't that right, Clara? Tell everyone about the photos you've been collecting, the ones you use to keep people in line." Clara's mask finally slipped completely. "You smug bastard. You think you're so smart with your computers and your security clearance. You have no idea what it's like to work twice as hard as everyone else just to get half the recognition." Jenna had everything handed to her. The promotion, the respect, the perfect husband who worshipped the ground she walked on. She didn't deserve any of it. The honesty was startling in its venom. "So, you decided to destroy her?" "I decided to level the playing field. Jenna needed to learn that success requires sacrifice. I just provided the education." Markham was staring at Clara like he'd never seen her before. "You set this whole thing up? You manipulated both of us?" "I created opportunities," Clara snapped. "What you did with them was your choice." "Opportunities." I savored the word. "Well, Clara, let me create an opportunity for you. Everyone in this bar now knows exactly what kind of person you are. Everyone in the boutique district will know by tomorrow morning. And everyone who's ever trusted you with their secrets is going to be wondering what other opportunities you've been creating." I turned to address the crowd directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, meet Clara Hendricks, assistant manager at Bella Boutique and part-time blackmailer. If you've ever done business with her, you might want to check what photos she's been taking and who she's been sharing them with." The crowd's mood shifted from entertainment to anger as the implications sank in. Several people pulled out their phones, either to record the confrontation or to start spreading the news. Clara realized she'd lost control of the situation completely. "This isn't over, Connor," she hissed, pushing through the crowd toward the exit. "Actually," I called after her, "it is. Game over. You lose." Markham followed her out, leaving me alone with a bar full of strangers who were looking at me with something approaching respect. The bartender sent over a whiskey on the house, and several people clapped me on the back as they returned to their conversations. But as I sat there, basking in the glow of public vindication, I realized Clara was right about one thing. This wasn't over, not even close. It was time for the final act. The Rosewood Community Center's annual charity auction was the social event of the season, where the district's business owners gathered to display their prosperity and compete for social status through strategic philanthropy. Under normal circumstances, Jenna would have spent weeks planning her outfit and rehearsing conversations designed to advance her career. Tonight, she was hiding in the parking lot, watching through the windows as her former friends and colleagues mingled without her. I'd arrived early and positioned myself near the registration table, where I could observe the social dynamics at play. The Gossip Network had been working overtime since the Murphy's Roadhouse incident 3 nights ago. Clara had disappeared entirely. Rumor was she'd driven to her sister's house in Chicago without giving notice at the boutique. Markham was reportedly staying at a motel while his divorce proceedings played out in spectacular fashion. And Jenna? Jenna was about to get her final lesson in consequences. Connor Ames, Simone Cartwright approached with the kind of smile that suggested she was enjoying the evening's entertainment. I have to say, you've certainly made things interesting around here. Simone, how's the boutique holding up without its management team? Surprisingly well, actually. Turns out the staff is quite capable when they're not being manipulated by their supervisors. We're promoting Sarah Chen from sales associate to interim manager. She's got integrity, which seems to be in short supply these days. The auction was beginning, with Mayor Davidson taking the podium to welcome everyone and introduce the evening's cause, funding for the community center's youth programs. As he spoke, I noticed Jenna finally entering through the side door, trying to blend into the crowd near the back. She looked terrible. Her usual polished appearance had been replaced by the hollow-eyed look of someone who hadn't been sleeping. Her dress, one I didn't recognize, was clearly borrowed, and her makeup couldn't quite hide the stress lines that had appeared around her eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, the mayor continued, before we begin the auction, I'd like to invite one of our community's most generous supporters to say a few words about the importance of youth programs. Connor Ames, would you please join me on stage? I hadn't expected this, but I wasn't about to waste the opportunity. As I walked to the podium, I could feel every eye in the room following me, including Jenna's panicked stare from the back. Thank you, Mayor Davidson. I adjusted the microphone, looking out over the crowd of familiar faces. You know, when I think about youth programs, I think about teaching young people important life lessons. Lessons about honesty, integrity, and the consequences of our choices. Murmurs rippled through the audience. They sensed something coming. I think about teaching them that actions have consequences, that lying to people who trust you will eventually catch up with you, that betraying someone's faith in you doesn't just hurt them, it damages your entire community. Jenna was edging toward the exit, but the crowd was too thick for a quick escape. Some of you know that my wife and I are getting divorced. What you might not know is why. I pulled out my phone, connecting it to the presentation system. I'd like to share a little story about trust, betrayal, and the importance of choosing your friends wisely. The first photo appeared on the large screen behind me, Jenna and Markham at Rosewood Cafe, his hand clearly visible on her thigh. The audience gasped collectively. This is my wife, Jenna, having coffee with Markham Dole. Notice the timestamp? Tuesday afternoon, when she told me she was working late on inventory. Click. The next photo showed them kissing in a hotel bar. This one was taken the following Thursday. She told me she was at a supplier meeting. Technically true, I suppose. The crowd was completely silent now, transfixed by the public destruction of a marriage playing out in high definition. Jenna had stopped trying to leave and was standing frozen near the back wall, tears streaming down her face. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Click. A photo of Clara and Markham in what appeared to be a heated conversation. This is Clara Hendricks, Jenna's supposed best friend, meeting with Markham 2 weeks before the affair began. Clara, who convinced my wife that sleeping with suppliers was just good business strategy. More photos flashed by. Clara with other men, other managers, a pattern of manipulation and blackmail that painted a picture of systematic corruption within the boutique district's business relationships. You see, folks, this wasn't just an affair. This was a carefully orchestrated scheme to manipulate vulnerable people for personal gain, and it worked for a while, until someone decided to fight back. I paused, letting the weight of the revelation settle over the room. The question we all need to ask ourselves is, what kind of community do we want to be? Do we want to be the kind of place where predators can manipulate good people into betraying their values? where success comes from exploitation rather than excellence. The silence was deafening. Even the catering staff had stopped moving, transfixed by the spectacle. I don't. I disconnected my phone and stepped back from the podium. That's why I'm donating $50,000 to the youth programs tonight. Because I believe in teaching the next generation that integrity matters more than shortcuts, that trust is earned through consistency, and that when someone betrays your faith in them, you don't just walk away. You make sure they can't do it to anyone else. The applause started slowly, then built to a thunderous ovation. People were standing, cheering, some wiping away tears. Through it all, Jenna remained frozen against the back wall, her face a mask of absolute devastation. As the crowd began to disperse, forming small groups to discuss what they'd witnessed, I made my way toward the exit. But Jenna intercepted me, grabbing my arm with desperate strength. "Connor, please. You've made your point. You've destroyed my reputation, my career, my friendships. Isn't that enough?" I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her tear-streaked face. "Enough? Jenna, I haven't even started." "What more could you possibly do to me?" I smiled, pulling a manila envelope from my jacket pocket. "Well, there's this." I handed her the envelope. "DNA test results. Turns out that pregnancy scare you had 6 months ago, the one that turned out to be nothing, it wasn't nothing, and it wasn't mine." Jenna's face went white as she opened the envelope and saw the fabricated lab results inside. She didn't need to know they were fake. The psychological impact was the same. You had a miscarriage, Jenna, and based on the timeline and the DNA, it was Markham's baby, which means your affair started a lot earlier than either of you admitted, which means everything you've told me for the past year has been a lie. She collapsed into a nearby chair, the envelope falling from her nerveless fingers. Around us, the last few auction attendees were staring openly, drawn by the drama of our confrontation. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Connor, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." "I know." I knelt down beside her chair, speaking quietly so only she could hear. "But intention doesn't matter anymore, Jenna. Results matter, consequences matter, and the consequence of betraying someone who trusted you completely is that you lose everything." I stood up, straightening my jacket. "Goodbye, Jenna. I hope Clara's opportunities were worth it." As I walked toward the parking lot, I could hear her sobbing behind me, the sound echoing through the nearly empty community center, but I didn't look back. Some bridges, once burned, should stay that way. The next morning, I packed the last of my belongings into my car and drove out of Rosewood for the final time. In my rearview mirror, I could see the boutique district growing smaller, along with all the people who'd learned the hard way that underestimating the quiet guy with the computer skills was a very expensive mistake. 3 months later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Jenna had moved back in with her mother in Phoenix. Markham's divorce had cost him half his assets and most of his business connections. Clara had never returned from Chicago. The boutique district had recovered, thriving under new management that prioritized integrity over manipulation. Sarah Chen had turned Bella Boutique into the most successful store in the area, proving that honest business practices were not only possible, but profitable. As for me, I'd taken a job with a cybersecurity firm in Denver, where my reputation for thoroughness and attention to detail had earned me a corner office and a salary that would have impressed even the old Jenna. I'd bought a house in the mountains, adopted a dog named Justice, and learned to appreciate the simple pleasure of going to bed without wondering what lies I'd discover in the morning. Some people might say I went too far, that my revenge was disproportionate to the crime, but those people had never experienced the particular kind of betrayal that comes from discovering that the person you trusted most in the world had been systematically lying to you for months while plotting your emotional destruction with someone who pretended to be your friend. I'd given Jenna 12 years of loyalty, honesty, and unconditional support. In return, she'd given me betrayal, manipulation, and a masterclass in how people you love can destroy you if you let them. The lesson was expensive, but it was worth every penny. Because in the end, I'd learned something valuable. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. And when they try to destroy your life, make sure they understand the difference between making an enemy and making a mistake. Jenna had made an enemy. And enemies, unlike mistakes, have consequences that last forever.